Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for today's episode. I have Allan here with us who has a really compelling story to share about his mindfulness journey. He, in my humble opinion, exudes kindness and resilience and is a beautiful example of the ways in which mindfulness can really help us to slow down and support ourselves to be with the challenges and difficulties in life. And as you will hear Allan discuss, when we practice greater self compassion and care, we can open more fully to the moments of our lives. So, welcome, Allan. So nice to have you here together with me.
Thank you so much, Courtney. It's very lovely to be here, and thank you so much for your kind words. I feel that, and I'll just say that your kindness helps me, like my nervous system, calm a little bit.
It's a symbiotic relationship because I feel the same way. Since I met you, which by the way, we met through LinkedIn, and what caught my attention was really your authenticity, but how beautifully you can capture the simplicity of mindfulness, but at the same time, the the ways in which it can be truly extraordinary. So I'm really excited to talk about mindfulness and to learn more about your journey. So if you'd like to just tell us a bit about your story. I know from our previous discussion that you had a life altering experience that actually opened you to the transformational power of mindfulness. So can you share with us, take us back to that moment?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that I had a number of life-altering,
Yeah.
moments in my life. But you know, I was a lawyer. I ended up leaving being a lawyer because of health issues. I have a degenerative eye condition. This is just background. And then
Yeah.
right after that, my father had very significant cancer. Then my brother passed. And then I would say, one of the most significant um, life-changing and life-altering experiences for me happened in 2012. Yeah, 2012. I was diagnosed with very serious stage 4 cancer. And it was very out of the blue. I had no idea. I think a lot of people who get diagnosed have no idea, and then boom, suddenly it's something very significant.
Mhm.
And it was on the heels of a lot of other changes and traumas and health things and what have you in my life. So it was very, very impactful for me. Um, at the time, I had already been meditating for many years. I had been, in 12-step recovery in Al-Anon for
Mhm.
many years. So I was really, and in therapy, like focusing on myself, focusing on getting present, focusing on meditating, focusing on healing.
Yeah.
Then cancer came in, and I was blown away.
Yeah.
I was really blown away, and it was the type of cancer where where I had to act pretty quickly,
Mhm.
and I ended up going to a doctor. I got many opinions. I went to a doctor, and yeah, he had sort of a lighter approach than other people. I had major surgery through him, and I woke up from the surgery um, expecting one thing, but something else happening much more than I had expected.
Mhm.
And I would say that that was the beginning of like a very dark journey for me. But I will say that, even though it was a dark journey, there is light, and
Yeah.
and there was light at the end of the tunnel. So I can take you through the journey right now if
Yeah.
if that's what you'd like.
Sure. I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And just sorry, I'm just at the time when all this is happening, were you practicing as an attorney?
I was not. I had already left because of, other my eye issues. And
Okay.
then So it had been about maybe 5 years,
Okay.
6 years. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened between me being an attorney and then being diagnosed with cancer.
Right. Okay.
And I'm very grateful that I had resources and tools because they were going to come in very handy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the long and the short of it is I woke up from surgery and my mind was blown away with the extent of it. I needed to have another surgery because they found more, cancer that they didn't remove properly. And then I needed to have radiation, 30 rounds of radiation. And I don't share this often with people. I'll share it. It was a head and neck cancer.
Mm.
And for me, head and neck cancer is really challenging. Like this is very important real estate here that we have. And so between surgery and radiation, my brain, my mind just couldn't grasp what was happening to me. And I call it PTSD related to medical trauma.
Hmm.
I was, I was seeing a therapist. He had to move to the VA. I switched to another therapist. I immediately was like, I need a lot of help. I need a lot of support. My mind can't comprehend what is happening to me. So I was seeing someone 4 days a week. So a therapist 4 days a week.
Hmm.
He was helpful. He was very helpful. And but my mind kept spinning. I thought recovery would be a week, and it was, many months of recovering. I chose to go stay with my parents to get extra support and extra help.
Hmm.
But while I was there, I was really suffering. I was really, really suffering. And, you know,
Physically and psychologically, emotionally.
yes,
Yeah.
physically, like the physical recovery ultimately took many years,
Hmm.
but the acute phase of it was very, very challenging. I don't need to go into all the details about it, but it was very difficult for me. And, I remember telling my therapist, like, I don't think I'm gonna eat sushi again, which I love. I don't think I'm gonna go to Kauai again, which I loved.
Hmm.
And I don't think I'm ever gonna date again because I just don't feel well,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, you will. And I just couldn't hear that.
Right.
So there was the physical part. Um, then there was also the emotional part. And our medical system is really designed to treat, in my opinion, the symptoms, but not the person, not the mental well-being of the person.
Right.
So this is very, very sensitive information for anybody listening out there. I just want to have a little warning
Hmm.
that, this is we're going to go a little dark, and then I'll get to the light part.
Yeah.
But my brain had me in deep suicidal ideation. I was writing, suicide notes. I was writing everything out. I mean, I had my will, trust, everything
Hmm.
prepared because I just couldn't see a way through it. Then I started radiation, right? The doctor told me that there was a positive margin, that there was no way to operate. And that was 30 rounds of radiation. And I just kept going deeper and deeper into this very dark place. And there was nothing, I just didn't see a way out of it. Again, I was seeing a therapist 4 days a week. I was talking to a lot of friends of mine in Al-Anon and recovery. I was talking to family members, other people, sending out emails, letting people know what I was going through.
Yeah.
But I was still really struggling.
Even with you having reached out to your team and people who cared about you, you were feeling alone and struggling.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to explain. I feel like my brain was just caught in a loop.
Yeah.
my whole world became very, very myopic and tiny, and my brain just kept circling through what if, why, why'd I do that? It was just an incredible amount of rumination,
Yeah.
memories of my brother,
Yeah.
just, losing my identity as a lawyer. Like it all just came to a significant head, for lack of a better word.
And to your point, just it goes to show the power of our minds that they can cause us to spiral down and down and down when our thoughts take us on this wild ride. And it's not to say that your thoughts aren't real, the thoughts are very much real. But until we're able to recognize just how caught up in the thoughts and how much they're pulling us down into these really dark places, we buy into them, we believe them, and we can feel really alone and trapped inside our minds. And so I imagine that that was compounded by the very real physicality to what it was you were going through with your diagnosis and the treatment. So in my eyes, it makes perfect sense for how isolating and how overwhelming this experience was for you.
Um, I'm a little emotional. I think part of that emotion is just hearing your reflection to me and you seeing me, hearing me, understanding me, like being there with me and not negating it or what have you.
No, not in any, and in fact, I welcome the, everything is welcome in this space. And with mindfulness, as I know you know that it can teach us, it can show us that we have the inner resources to be with it all. Again, it may not be exactly how or even remotely close to the way we want it to be, but we all have these innate qualities that can be like a superpower to us. And I know because I'm looking at you and I know how far you've come and I see all the goodness you're putting into the world. So I know that your story moves from this very, very dark, challenging place to so much light and joy. So I'll let you continue to share with listeners.
I really appreciate your comments too, which are, it I am living proof that if we hold on to the wrong thoughts,
Hmm.
that can take us very far down and into a dark place.
Yeah.
Our thoughts are not who we are, but if we hold on to them and let them take us places,
Yeah.
then they sort of in a way become who we are and they define us.
Yeah.
And, to me, mindfulness is about observing the thoughts, about letting them pass through us.
Hmm.
But I'll just, during this time, I did go to a cancer center here in Los Angeles. I did a 6-week course in mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was very, very hard for me to do the course
Yeah.
just because I was in so much trauma, but it did provide me a little bit of relief. I would say that the radiation was the hardest, was sort of the kicker that really sent me down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I won't go into much detail about it, but towards the end of receiving radiation, again, seeing my therapist 4 days a week, the hospital saying to me, the social worker saying, "I can't help you. Go talk to your therapist." Like everybody just kind of brushing me off. And I felt that deeply, in me. I mean, there were people who supported me, but a lot of
Yeah.
people who just couldn't be there.
Right.
And it got so very, very, very dark. Again, a sensitive topic, but the suicidal ideation, planning, whatever, ramped up so much for me. And I just had an awakening and I'm so, so grateful that I did. There was a thought that came through me that I did hold on to, which said, get help, get more help, right?
Was
You can't.
this, I'm sorry.
This was right at the end of radiation.
Okay, okay.
So the thought was get more help, and I did listen to that. I went to my father, and um, he was so helpful to me.
Hmm.
We drove around. I wasn't functioning in the world. We drove around to 4 or 5 treatment centers, and I ended up finding a treatment center. It was a drug and alcohol center, but I went there purely for trauma.
Right.
They said they could help me. I went there. I saw a couple people I knew. I was like, oh, I'm going to go there, check it out, go home, think about it. And I went there and I ended up staying there.
Mm.
And for me, I would say the most powerful moment in this whole journey happened at the treatment center. I think when we are vulnerable, when we reach out for help, when we admit that we can't do it on our own, and so many of us think we can do it on our own,
Yeah,
but when we really just accept that we need help, which is what I did, magical things happen.
yeah.
I ended up meeting my sort of case counselor, Scott, and Scott had a similar cancer, different but similar, had a brother who passed as well. We had all these similarities, and he just wasn't like in the world. I wouldn't be like, hey, Scott, let's be friends. Like
Yeah,
looks can be very deceiving.
yeah.
And his soul, he was such a kind, caring man.
Hmm.
And I remember meeting with him in my room for the first time. I'm very fortunate I was able to go to this treatment center, but I went to my room and Scott sat next to me and just said, we have so much more in common than you think.
Yeah,
And that's when he told me about some of his story. And he said, are you meditating? Are you doing any sort of mindfulness type practices? I'm like, I was before cancer, but I just can't get myself to do that now.
yeah.
And he said, I want to just offer you something. He said, why don't you just sit on the sofa here, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground, put your arms on the sofa, feel the texture of the sofa, notice the colors, maybe the sounds in the room, what you're seeing, smelling, feel your feet on the ground, plant them on the ground, and then set your phone, your timer for 1 minute and just drop in for 1 minute and see what comes to you.
Mm.
And I looked at him, I said, Scott, I mean, 1 minute, that's like an eternity. At the time, it felt like an eternity. I said, but you know what? I'm going to give it a shot,
Yeah,
right? I'm going to give it a shot, and I just want to see what happens.
yeah.
And I remember doing all the things he said. I positioned myself, shoes off, arms on the sofa, taking it in, breathing. The window was open. There was greenery outside. I could feel a little breeze come through, seeing the trees, seeing the room. And I set my phone for 1 minute and I closed my eyes. And in that 1 minute, I heard one sentence, just a few words, 4 words is all I heard. I heard the universe, my highest self, whatever you call it, say to me, you have to live.
Mm.
And for me, that was the turning point of everything. I moved from darkness into light. I moved from no hope to hope. I moved from not seeing a life for myself because of the cancer to seeing a big, beautiful life. And I remember telling Scott, you know, what I'd heard or what I'd experienced. And he just put his arm around me, I think, and he said, "We've got a lot of work to do to get you there, but we're going to get you there." And I ended up staying in the treatment center for residential treatment center for 2 months. I did about 6 to 8 months of intensive outpatient.
Mhm.
And I have to say that that year, I had sushi. I went to Kauai. I wasn't ready to start dating it yet, so I that was on hold. But really, what opened up for me, I really credit it to that 1 minute of mindfulness. What really opened up for me was my whole life. I went from this tiny little myopic way of thinking. I couldn't help myself, and my whole world opened up. And
Mhm.
that moment changed everything for me. And I would say that the whole experience of going through cancer, afterwards, I experimented with life. I did a lot of spiritual retreats, did a lot of crazy things here and there, and, had fun. I joined a spiritual community that ended up being a cult and got out. But again, that minute opened me up so much. I wanted to just feel and experience and take in so many different things. And I did.
I I mean, what's coming across is just the power, how transformational that 1 minute was for you. But in describing that minute, it was almost as if I could feel that breeze that you were talking about and the greenery. I could picture it and sensing your feet making contact with the floor and the touch of the clothing you were wearing against the skin. What it sounds like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so often especially when we are experiencing chronic health conditions, whether it's psychological, whether it's physical, and we're given a diagnosis, we can become our diagnosis. We can believe that we are what the inner narrative tells us, and we can get so caught up in our heads and believing this inner critic or feeling trapped by the cycles of our thoughts. But in that minute, again, not a lot of time, but that minute that you gave yourself to let go of all of the thinking and believing and just dropping in more fully to the body, sometimes when we can give ourselves the permission to just be, to have more of an embodied experience and to let go of the story, to let go of having to be our conditions or our diagnoses, when we can just feel into the body, we can really link up with our wholeness and completeness in this very moment, just as we are, despite whatever issues we feel we have or whatever problems or whatever needs fixing. We can rest in that embodied awareness, and when we can feel more connected to our bodies, it opens us up to endless possibility. In this case, this message that came to you, and knowing that you deserve to live. It brought goosebumps to my arms, and it's just such a beautiful story.
I really, really, really appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
And I would say it's not only medical. I mean, whether someone's going through a divorce,
Right.
loss of a family member, a parent, a kid, a sibling, relationship changes, moving,
Or
job
even
stuff.
jobs, what you were saying, where that identity, that loss of identity here, you had been practicing as a lawyer. So every which direction, when we can start to get more intimate with how we're relating to experience and notice how that can create a lot of suffering, even when there's already difficulty just from the experience itself, we can compound that. But if we don't give ourselves even just a minute to just be, we're not able to break the cycle. We're not able to find more nourishing ways to be with the challenges in our lives.
Absolutely. And what just came to me, I hadn't really thought about this until you just shared what you just shared, which is I think that during cancer, during that experience, my mind was go, 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 right? It just kept going, but it was circular.
Mhm.
It was just going in circles and circles, as in a spiral.
Yeah.
And, there were little moments where I was, more present with myself, like getting help, seeing my therapist more, going to the mindfulness-based stress reduction class, et cetera, et cetera. But really, that 1 minute for me was the moment where my mind switched from go, 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 go in circles to hold on a second. Let's slow down for 1 minute and just be, right. I don't remember any other thoughts. I don't remember anything. I remember being so present
Yeah.
in the room, right? And you said something else which is very important too, right? So I view that as like a major reset of my nervous system,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't mean, oh, I'm good, everything's great, I'm done, life is, right?
Right.
There was
Right.
still work to be done. But the thing is, if you take it to a smaller moment, right? If I'm spinning out about something, right? A little reset. It doesn't have to be a full life reset, but just a little reset can change everything, just like that 1 minute did for me.
Yeah, there's a quote as you're sharing this. There's a quote coming to mind. It often gets credited to a man by the name of Viktor Frankl, and you may know of this, but supposedly it's not necessarily something he said, but it highlights the point you're making that we can help ourselves to step out of reactivity. We can find ease. And it doesn't have to take 15, 20, 30 minutes. We can take moments throughout our day and just giving ourselves even a minute to sense into the body can help us to calm ourselves, can help us to ground ourselves so that rather than falling into perpetual reactivity, both in the mind and the body, we can find ways to support ourselves and we can respond in really skillful ways. So the quote is between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And sometimes I think in all of the, like you said, the mind's just going, 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 and we fall into doing, doing, doing. We forget that we have that sense of agency, that power. But when we can slow things down, again, doesn't mean we're slowing down the speed of the world because we can't control everything, but we can control ourselves. We can find an inner slowing down, and that can profoundly change our lives and how we experience the moments of our lives.
Yes, and I love that you brought up that, that quote.
Viktor
Uh,
Frankl, yeah.
yes, I haven't heard that in a few years, but of course it resonates with me. Um, I want to just quickly add one thing. The whole cancer journey and everything that had happened before that,
Yeah,
that's really what led me to become a therapist. And since I was a practicing lawyer for 10 years, I, want to help lawyers because I think there's a need there. But I want
100%.
to just add that in quickly. But I have a question for you.
Okay.
I'm curious about this. I view these small moments of slowing down, right? Like
Yeah,
that minute for me, or what Viktor Frankl is describing, that space,
that
that
space.
pause.
Yeah.
I kind of view them, and this is a big word, so I don't know how you feel about it. I kind of view them as like a circuit breaker.
Mm.
So, right, the things are firing, firing, going, going,
Yeah.
going, and then
Yeah.
you just stop for a minute,
Yeah.
you take a pause, you
Yeah.
take that space, and it's like it's almost like like breaking the cycle of spinning or whatever it may be.
I would have to agree with you 100% on that one. It's, again, it can. It's, I don't want people who are listening to think, well, I allowed myself to have that space, and I feel like the circuit breaker or the electricity or when it's still ramped up, it's still going. So it's not about forcing anything, but without giving ourselves that space, that moment for mindfulness, that opportunity to rest and reset, we're not able to incline ourselves in the direction of relaxation or ease or even presence to notice what's here. But that space, that ability to, what you're saying, to pause, to check in on ourselves, to notice what is here. How am I experiencing this moment? When we give ourselves the moment or moments to become aware, that's what allows us to know how we can support ourselves in that moment and beyond. That is what allows us to clearly see what's happening. Otherwise, we're just on autopilot. So I would have to agree with you with the understanding that it doesn't mean everything's shutting off and our minds stop going, and we're our most relaxed selves, but without giving ourselves permission to slow down and to pause, we don't have a chance. We don't have a chance to even invite a bit of slowing down or balance.
Yes, and you're making a very, very important point, which is taking a moment, isn't gonna just like with my minute, it didn't miraculously change everything and life was suddenly great for me the next day. It
Mhm.
still required work. And when I think of mindfulness, I view it as a practice. I view it as something that, you know, done regularly can build, memory,
Yeah,
like a memory. So here's a quick example.
yeah, yeah.
Yesterday, I went on a walk, right? And my brain is spinning and going and whatever. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk for the next 5 minutes and I'm just going to focus on what I smell,
Mm,
right? And so
yeah,
I passed, I think, jasmine or gardenias,
yeah.
I smelled a little incense here, a little that, and just by smelling, my mind slowed down.
Well, I think that you surprised me with that one. I thought you were going to say, I just paid attention to what it feels like to be walking. I love that you chose your sense of smell to be a resting place for attention. And that just goes to show you that with mindfulness, there are all these different tools. We have a tool belt, and it doesn't have to take 15, again, 20, 30 minutes. When we take minutes or a minute to practice, we strengthen these inner tools of ours. And we can see how at different moments or at any given day, perhaps resting attention on our sense of smell, other days maybe feeling the breath, other days maybe opening to sound, that we can find ways to support ourselves. And one of the, just going back to what you, this sort of comes full circle to what you said when we opened up the discussion about how you had, when you got your cancer diagnosis, you had already been practicing meditation. You sort of had your tool belt on. But John Kabat-Zinn, who created the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, uses the analogy of a parachute, and that we want to be weaving the strands of our parachute day in, day out, so that when we need to jump out of the airplane, that we have this parachute that's fully functioning, that we can use it. We don't want to wait until an emergency. And so, to your point, if we regularly practice a minute here, a minute there, it accumulates, it adds up. And we can see the different ways, depending on where we are physically, emotionally, we could see that we can turn to these different tools when we most need them. So
Uh,
I love how you kind of threw a curveball with you went on a walk, but you were gauging your sense of smell, and that can really allow us to come out of the brain and rest in present moment awareness.
Absolutely. And today, when I go on my walk, I may focus on my breath, or I may focus on the way my skin feels in the breeze and the sunshine. I may focus on what I see. I may focus on what I hear, meaning to your point, mindfulness can take so many different forms, shapes, and forms. Mindfulness is not about sitting on a pillow for 10 hours and meditating and going inwards. It's
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah. And I love that you're pointing out that misconception because I do think, especially in competitive professions or really demanding professions such as law and other areas where people are really strapped for time, it becomes an all or nothing approach. And it doesn't have to be that way. But I see that we're coming close to the end of the episode, and I know that even just this gem of a practice that you shared with us, how we can go for a mindful walk and we can engage the senses and rest attention on the actual experience as opposed to being disconnected and lost in our thoughts. That's really beneficial. If there is someone listening who's struggling in some way, whether it's burnout, overwhelm, maybe it's a diagnosis or a physical condition or the pace of life, what's one other small, easily accessible practice that you suggest they try today?
Well, it's so interesting because, well, I mean, if we're talking, I think the first thing that I want to say is just reaching out for help is huge,
Yeah.
right? Knowing when you need help, reaching out for help, and trusting that there is help out there. So that I want to say. But it's interesting, before you said what's one small little thing, I'm like, well, lawyers are working really hard. It's sort of, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of whatever, but everybody needs to eat, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Everybody needs to eat food. And I'm going to be doing this. I'm going, I think, next weekend to a little bit of a retreat. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is mindful eating. So maybe a little thing that someone can try while they're at their desk eating or at home or whatever it is just take a minute to really feel the texture of the food,
Mm-hmm.
taste the texture. What do you taste? How does it taste? How does it impact your mouth? And what does it smell like? Maybe take a moment to just inhale. So that's, to me, weaving mindfulness into something that we all have to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eat.
Yeah. Yeah, we just did it last night. I'm in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program right now. I'm retaking it. And last night's class, we practiced mindful eating. And traditionally, we use in the MBSR program, we use a raisin. I used the earlier version of a raisin. I had a grape. And I will tell you that I never practiced mindful eating with a grape. And I eat grapes very much the same way that I eat raisins or M&Ms. So just like by the handful mindlessly and just engaging my senses and really feeling it on the tongue and in between the lips and consciously choosing which side to bite it with first and waiting until I had the urge to swallow. It brought such meaning to one grape. So I really do believe that when we engage our senses and we choose to show up for the moments of our lives, they're so much more vivid and there's so much more richness there. So thank you for sharing that.
I want to just add a very quick comment. When I did it, I think with blueberries. Um, in my mindfulness-based stress reduction class. But what I really heard so deeply in what you just shared in mindful eating is it's actually a way to connect deeply with ourselves.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. We can notice some of our habitual patterns and how quickly we do things, not only eating, but we're really not present for the experience, whether it's the loved ones in our lives, whether it's being on a walk or engaging with our pets. So we can really show up and in turn find so much more joy in a world where sometimes it can feel like it's outweighed with what can be really challenging. So
Absolutely.
I want to thank you, Allan, for your time today. And I also wanted to share with listeners if they want to learn more about you, if they want to work together with you, how's best for them to connect?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for
Yeah.
inviting me. Um, I really, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I just feel your warmth, your kindness, your love, and I just want to let you know how transparent that is and
Oh,
how I feel safe
oh, I'm
talking to you.
glad. The feelings are mutual, and it's not for the faint of heart to come onto a podcast show and be so vulnerable. So I just want to let you know I recognize your courage, and just by sharing your story, I know that you're helping so many other people. So I
Thank
really enjoyed our time together, and yeah.
Just quickly, the best way for people to find me, on LinkedIn, Allan, Allan, last name Mouw. My website, same, allanmowtherapy.com. I've all different ways to get in touch with me there. So I
Oh,
really appreciate you asking the question.
and from being connected on LinkedIn, I just want to let everyone know you really post some amazing content. So if nothing else, if you're not ready to start practicing mindfulness, but you want to learn a little bit more, you can just follow Allan, and there's a plethora of information that you'll find there. So thank you again, Allan. I hope that you have a great weekend. I know you mentioned before we started recording you're going out for sushi, so I hope that you can have the most delicious, mindful experience with that. And I look forward to staying connected with you.
Thank you so much again. I really appreciate this time and this space, Courtney. Thank you.
Likewise.
Okay.